Hello everyone, my name is David Andrzejek. I am a student at National Louis University, and I am doing this teach back video for my class in EPS511, specifically Chapter 13 in the book Educational Psychology, Reflection for Action. Chapter 13 is on the topic of diversity. So diversity is something we've heard a lot about in the last 10 to 20 years. And in the scope of this textbook, we're going to be talking about what diverse learners are and a few other characteristics about diversity. So first, diversity goes beyond ethnic and cultural differences. It could cover characteristics such as language, socioeconomic status, ability, and gender. And the way that a given school will handle diversity, there's basically two different types of responses to diversity. One of them is the idea of equality, and the other is the idea of accommodation. So in terms of equality, we think that all students are created equal, and hence they should have equal opportunity to learn. And in terms of accommodation, we understand that there is no one-size-fits-all program that will give us the goal of teaching students to their best ability. Unfortunately, we have a set of standards that all students need to live up to. So we need to find a way to meet those standards when you have such a diverse student base. So there's going to be three main points I want to cover related to Chapter 13. And in general, I want to cover, the first point is going to be socioeconomic status. The second point is going to be language, more specifically students who have other primary language than English. And the third one is going to be how to attain a multicultural education classroom. So let's start with socioeconomic status. The reason I chose this is because it's kind of a mixture of socioeconomic status and ethnicity. Not that the two are completely related, but there tends to be a lot of overlap between different ethnic backgrounds and lower socioeconomic status. There's three basic socioeconomic status. It would be the high class, middle class, and low class. And this socioeconomic status is kind of an all-encompassing concept that includes income, education level of the family, and the occupational status of the family. With the logic going that the higher you are in socioeconomic status, the better a student's educational prospects will be. Now the book gives three examples, or gives an example of three families and gives characteristics of all those families. In the first family, the student is there. All these children are 7 years old in the given family. In the first family, the 7-year-old child has many brothers and sisters. They're very poor. The oldest brother is in jail. The father is an alcoholic. He's minimally employed. The mother doesn't do any work out of the house. And when he comes home from school, he's basically not, the parents don't involve themselves with him. He's kind of left to himself. He has kind of ratty clothes, and he's not even allowed to check out books from the library because the parents are afraid that he'll lose it, and then they'll have to pay for the book. In the second example, the 7-year-old child is also poor. He has several brothers and sisters, but his parents are, and although the parents are poor, they're very involved in his life. He actually has reasonable clothes. They might not be the best, but they're still not ratty. His father works and also reads to him. His mother does not work out of that home, but she's involved in his schoolwork when he comes home. And then in the third example, the 7-year-old child comes from a rich family. Both of the parents are well employed and educated, and they're both highly involved with him after school. So in these examples, we have two sets of families that are in a low socioeconomic class, whereas the third one is in the high one. And despite that, by the descriptions, you could probably tell that of the two in the lower socioeconomic class, that one of the students will probably do better than the other. So the point of the book is that poverty tends to lead to a higher likelihood of developmental problems in school. But there are 3 ways to overcome this. One of them is with caring and supportive relationships. The other is with high expectations. And then the other is with meaningful participation in school activities. Well, the second example, that child and family, are at least giving him 2 of those 3, which is caring relationships and high expectations. And the chapter kind of closes, or I should say this section closes with the idea that kids should be identified for needing extra assistance, not necessarily based on their socioeconomic status, but more so based on their school performance. Because even though the status is more likely to lead to a poorer outcome, it's not a given. So school performance is the best way to approach that. This topic was covered on pages 455 to 457 of the textbook. The next topic is English language learners. In America, we have about 8 to 10% of the students where English is not their primary language. And when this is the case, that language barrier affects basically every aspect of their life. And studies show that lower scores, that people who have English as their non-primary language tend to get lower scores in reading and math. However, with some English language learning services and some native language use in content area, these students could be expected to perform at the grade level that they're in. There's an organization called the Teachers of English Speakers. I'm sorry. The organization is called Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages. Excuse me. And they came up with 3 standards which to strive for. The first one is to use English in social settings. The second standard would be to use English in the classroom as much as possible in all content areas. And then the third one is to use English in socially and culturally appropriate ways. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is the option to use the native language when necessary, but these standards are there for goals to strive to. Now, this section of English language learners can be found in page 460 to 461 of the textbook. And now finally, we have the multicultural education. Multicultural education is a philosophical concept and an approach to education. So it's a philosophical concept in so much as it involves equality, equity, justice, and human dignity. And its approach to education because it helps students of it helps students from diverse backgrounds to get a proper education. And there is, so if you were to try and implement a multicultural teaching method, there's basically three broad categories which I will cover up here. So you got the multicultural teaching environment, and it's three things. All right, so the first one is you want to integrate culturally relevant content into lesson plans. So that would basically mean giving examples from different cultures in your lessons such that students could relate, depending on the student body. Integrate culturally relevant topics. Next is you want to adjust your instruction to accommodate the need of diverse learners. Okay, so it's adjust to diverse learners. And finally, it's to reduce prejudicial attitudes and behaviors. So reduce prejudice. And that would be covering certain topics in a way that would not exacerbate stereotypes or single anyone out in a negative way. This multicultural education section can be found mostly on page 465 of the textbook. So this concludes my Teach Back video of Chapter 13. Thank you for listening.